Hey guys, my name is Jeff, and this is the BMW Z8, a two-seater, front-engine, rear-wheel drive sports car, which was designed to be BMW's flagship with a starting price of $128,000. The Z8 features retro styling inspired by the late 50s BMW 507. It features neon lighting, yes, as in neon for the 50s and 60s. It has the engine from the BMW M5, but now in a lighter car, a 6-speed manual transmission, and more. Now, this 2003 BMW Z8 is actually for sale. It's heading up for auction on Bring a Trailer and is selling with no reserve as offered from Cascio Motors.
The BMW Z8 was produced from 1999 to 2003 with just 5,703 cars for the world, with 2,543 of those making their way to North America like this one. The Z8 was unconventional for BMW as a company which primarily focused on sporty luxury sedans and featured no initial project constraints as the flagship model, leaving the design team led by Chris Bangle only limited to their imagination. The E52, as it was called, resulted in a retro-styled exterior designed by Heinrich Fisker, reminiscent of the late 50s BMW 507, over a simple, retro, and analog interior designed by Scott Lempert. In order to reduce speculation and cement the car as an instant classic, BMW promised a 50-year stockpile of spare parts would be produced to support the Z8 fleet. The limited production meant parts and construction for the Z8 were hand-built and even led to BMW offering various bespoke customization options. There would even be an Alpina model of the Z8, which featured the M62 engine and an automatic transmission. The Z8 would even be featured in the James Bond film The World Is Not Enough, where it met an untimely end after being sawed in half. Overall, the car was well received, which is reflected in values, which on average currently exceed the car's then new MSRP of $128,000.
Getting right into it, this is the key to the BMW Z8. It's fairly simple, lock, unlock, and trunk release, but the fact that it's branded Z8 is a pretty cool feature. Moving on to the car, this example is finished in titanium silver over black, and it is a spectacular silver that does a good measure for the body and the design of this car, which of course is retro styled, but more importantly, when we talk about the makeup of this car, the body is actually aircraft grade aluminum, and because this was the flagship and they wanted to make no compromises, it also featured a bespoke aluminum structure for the chassis underneath that was specific to the BMW Z8, and that featured strut suspension in the front with a multi-link setup in the rear, and of course disc brakes front and rear. Now, moving on to some of the other cool features, I think my favorite thing about this car is actually the neon lights. So these turn signals here in the front, we have the side markers, and even the rear taillights are all neon. Yes, neon as in the 50s and 60s billboard sign neon. And they did that because it presents a very sharp, bespoke style look, but of course are very, very cool and very unique to the BMW Z8. Now, moving back to the front of the car, the split grille nose here is very much reminiscent of the 507, but an interesting feature is while the headlights are up top, that's not everything. It's really just the low beams, because these here in the grille are actually your high beams, so that's a pretty interesting, unique setup. As we come around, you can see these beautiful fender flares that really embellish the Roadster style. We have these BMW 5 twin-spoke wheels that measure 245/45/18 in the front and 275/18 in the rear to help with some of that mechanical grip. You can see the nose and hood is actually quite long because the engine, as I'll show you later, is set so far back to improve weight distribution. You do, of course, have your spray nozzles there in chrome, your wipers, chrome power adjustable mirrors, and this little detail here for those side markers and this sort of heat extractor type intake. This was something that appeared on the Z8, again reminiscent of the 507, but it would make its way into later BMW models. We would see it with the E46 BMW and even some of the later models after that. As we continue moving down, very cool chrome door handles, but we get to the exciting part. Now, this car is, of course, a convertible. Every single BMW Z8 would have come with a body color hardtop from the factory with defrosters, which is a very cool feature, but that could be removed for open top motoring. Now, once you had the top removed, you actually have a powered soft top, which in this case is black and can be raised or lowered at the touch of a button. And when you wanted to make it look a bit better, you get this as well. This is a black tonal color, which matches the interior, that cleans up the look of the car when the soft top is down. It's quite a nice feature as well. I also enjoy these roll hoops, which appear to be structural and there in the event of a rollover, which is a great reassuring feature for any convertible. Now, moving on to some of the other details, as we get to the back, we can see our filler here for our gas tank, our third brake light, our neon lights here at the back, and these two rear lights here. This one is the reverse light, which is a pretty unique feature. And you can tell by looking at the size of the trunk, you actually have a fair amount of storage here in the back as well, which will be good if you decide to take your Z8 on trips. You also get a dual exit exhaust, which sounds pretty good. So moving on to the interior, we can go ahead and unlock the car with our power locks via our key fob, and we get access to the black interior on our BMW Z8, which looks quite nice. You can see it's also very much retro inspired, but it doesn't look anything like the original 507 interior. They went a different direction with this, but still kept it very simple and minimal and rearranged some things with some very cool solutions. You can take a look here at our black leather seats that have some nice side bolstering that are in fact power adjustable and even heated for those cold days where you still want to enjoy your BMW Z8. I also quite like the little badge back here, just showing you that this is in fact a BMW Z8. With that, let's go ahead and climb inside our 3-pedal BMW Z8, and let's talk about what's going on in front of us. Well, at first glance, there's not a whole lot of gauges there. There's just the headlight controls and the place where you put your Z8 key. So you go ahead and put in your key here, twist it over and hit the engine start button, and your Z8 roars to life. Now, one of the coolest things that they did in this car that I'd like to share with you is actually right here in the driver's door. Now, they also have these pockets, which are pretty cool, but not the main exciting feature. That's going to be these selection switches right here. Now, these switches, as you note, is just one switch, a selector switch, and then another switch here in the back as sort of toggle. Now, this is your window switch, but you only get one. Normally the driver gets both, right? But what they've done here is the selector works for both the windows and the power mirrors. So if you go ahead and push it to the left, it'll only raise the driver's side, but not the passenger side window. So that's a pretty cool feature, and that goes the same for the power mirror adjustments. If you go ahead and put it in the middle selection switch and you hit the raise button, well, now you raise both windows. And that is a very ingenious feature that takes up less space. You could argue technically saves a few ounces, I suppose, but is a very cool minimal feature for a car like this. Now, as we go ahead and close it up, we have our, of course, headlight switches we talked about earlier. You'll have your turn signals, which are quite nice. They illuminate here on the dash, depending on if you're going left or right. All of your gauges are actually in the center of the car, but you may have noticed they are in fact angled towards the driver. You have a fuel gauge, you have your speedo, which does have a digital display for your odometer, and then you have the tachometer over here on the right, which you can see revs up to 7,000 RPM, which even has a clock in the tachometer, which is pretty unique, along with our temperature over here. In the center, you'll find your climate controls, which don't have a ton of labels. They keep it nice and simple here. Your fan speed, of course, hot and cold. Which vents do you want it to come out of? And then finally over here, the type of versions, obviously AC being the little snowflakes. Here down below, you might think there's no radio because it's hidden behind this beautiful body color paint match. Here you can adjust your various things, including some of the navigation, which requires you to spell it by letter, and you also get some of your tire reset lights and various things down below. Go ahead and hide that, and here we have a sport button. This sport button actually remaps the throttle to make it feel a bit more responsive and a bit more sporty. And then you have your hazards, of course your lock buttons, and then we have the power top button. Behind that is our 6-speed manual transmission. We have a handbrake here. That's a real handbrake, not an electronic parking brake. Then you have some additional storage and locations for your cigarette lighter. And behind that is additional storage, which also comes with the attachment for the phones that would have been available for this car. On the passenger side, we have more of that door storage. You get a locking glove box, and you even get a cup holder, which is a nice thing for the driver and not so nice for the passenger. But all in all, it's a very bespoke detail in the interior. I like the way everything looks. Some of the functionality, like this, for example, is the receiver for the fob, but when you twist it, it turns on your interior map lights, which is a pretty cool feature to make several things work as one and really reduce the clutter here in the interior for the sake of making a better experience for the driver. Under the hood is a naturally aspirated V8, which is actually shared with the larger BMW M5 sedan, but now it's in a lighter car. The engine is known as the S62, and it's an all-aluminum dual overhead cam with dual Vanos variable valve timing and dual throttle bodies, 4.9-liter V8 that's good for 394 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. And here in the Z8, it was only offered with a 6-speed manual transmission. You can also see that the engine's actually set fairly far back relative to the wheels in the car. And what that does is it gave the Z8 50-50 weight distribution, so it'll feel good in the twisties as well. Now this thing weighs 3,494 pounds and should do 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds, a quarter mile in 13 seconds, with a limited top speed of 155 miles per hour. But this thing was also good for touring, as it featured a fairly sizable 19.3-gallon fuel tank, and depending on how you drive it, should be good for 300 to 400 miles of range per tank. So what's it like to drive the BMW Z8? Well, really, it's a fantastic experience. The interior feels like it's wrapped around you, and then whenever you want it, you have V8 noises just with the touch of a pedal. Not to mention the fact that it's a 6-speed manual transmission means that you can enjoy this car wherever you go. But it's so smooth, so comfortable, firm but not hard, that it also makes it easy to see this as a grand touring car that you could usually drive across the country if you wanted to. I think the whole thing with the Z8 is it's just an experience. You have a car that is retro styled inside and out and has all of the sporting nature of an old car, but it also has lots of modern amenities, even that can be hidden away so you don't have to look at them if you don't want to. But it's just such a great car. And that engine, although the car is not overly fast, it's not a supercar per se, it's definitely fast when you get on it. It's more than enough power for something like this, and you can easily enjoy this car and its driving nature. And really, they knocked it out of the park. And there's a reason that these cars, value-wise, have just skyrocketed and exceeded their new MSRP, even now as used cars. And it's really impressive what BMW managed to do here. The design team, the fact that the whole car essentially was almost like a blank slate to build whatever they wanted from the ground up. And so they built a masterpiece. So there you have it. That is a quick look at the BMW Z8, specifically this 2003 BMW Z8, which is up for sale. It's heading up for auction on Bring a Trailer and is selling with no reserve as offered from Cascio Motors. So if you wanted to own one, especially this beautiful titanium silver over black example, this is your opportunity. But with that, that is the end of the video. If you enjoyed it and could leave me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it, and consider getting subscribed for content like this in the future. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.